I just want to start by talking about Orbia. Orbia is the mothership. It's where it's the company that owns us. They're a fairly large corporation. They operate in 41 different countries. They have a bunch of plants. They have a lot of R&D facilities, a lot of people, and they also own 2 fluoride mines as well too. But when you look at their product sectors and their pillars, we're basically involved in building infrastructure, data communication, precision agriculture, polymer solutions, and fluor. So it's kind of, there's a lot of things that kind of interconnected in terms of our product lines and our pillars. When you look at Duraline as a company, we started back in 1971 and basically started in water and gas. So that's kind of where the birth of the company was. And I'm not going to go through all these innovations in history, but one of the things that Duraline has done very well is they've promoted new products. They spent a lot of money in R&D. To mention a few things that we're going to talk about, Silicor, which is now called Super Silicor. They've introduced things like aerial duct for above ground applications, locatable microducts themselves, low smoke, zero halogen, and future path and jumbo, which we see in a lot of communication. And if you look at these engineered conduits and microducts and future paths and cable and conduit and accessories, a lot of them have kind of surrounded themselves within communication cables. And now with the launch of PowerGuard, we're getting into the power side of cabling. When you look at Duraline in its global reach, we are all over the country, or actually all over the world, but you can see basically in the United States, there's a huge footprint there, but we are global. And our roots in Canada, for those who know, Duraline purchased our facility, which was 2 hours north of Toronto in Gravenhurst. And basically it's now Duraline, but when you look at Gravenhurst, they've actually had a huge stand in the communication and the general utility contractor market with regard to high density polyethylene manufacturing. And actually, since 1964, so it's pretty incredible. With regard to Duraline, we also have another facility, which is a sales and stocking location in Red Deer, Alberta. So we do have a bit of a footprint in Western Canada as well too. I wanted to talk a little bit about standard HDP, resins, and the difference between CSA, high density polyethylene. And I say all pipes are not created equal. And we have to look at, the classification of resins. And one of the things that we see with a lot of high density polyethylene manufacturers is that they'll use a lot of regrind. And regrind can come from different places. It can come from sources that really aren't backwards compatible. So that means like you're not using your own virgin regrind in your plant, you're buying regrind, you're pelletizing it, and you're using it. So one of the things that's important to know is that with the CSA standard, it actually calls it a specific resin. So you cannot use regrind. You can't even use your own regrind. So, the good thing is you're going to get a good quality product. And another thing I wanted to talk about too, because this has kind of been a confusion point for the standards for many, many, many years. So even back 20 years ago, you're looking at the B137 standard from CSA, and this standard has been around for a while and has been used in a lot of electrical situations. And what it is, it's a potable cold water listing for CSA. So if you see this for electrical, it's really not the right thing, but because there was no standard for HDP for electrical, quite often we would see this being used or being called out. So now that we have a CSA standard, we really need to make sure that these two standards aren't getting confused. So what is PowerGuard? Basically, PowerGuard is a high density polyethylene product, so HDP, that has been tested to the C22.2, which is the electrical standard in Canada, and is an alternative to PVC sticks in an open trench environment. So that's basically what it is. It's just another product now that's been added to be able to be used in the C22.2. And when we look at, PowerGuard as a whole, the C22.2 number 32718 is the HDP listing, and this is what it looks like. And it's also called out in the CEC, the 2018 version. So it is there. And our testing we have an ETL testing through Intertech, which is tested to that CSA standard. And the thing that's really good about this is now you can use PowerGuard for up to 69 kV. So it changes the whole market out there in terms of what you can and can't use for electrical. For some of you, this might be kind of, an ABC, but I don't know the level of understanding out there or what the need of learning is here. So I'm going to go through some of the traditional electrical conduit options. And what we see, of course, is rigid PVC. It comes in 10 and 20 foot sticks. It can't be horizontally drilled. The exception here is they do have a horizontally drilled, a directional drilled PVC, but it is a little more expensive. It's not the standard PVC conduit, and you actually click them together. So it's not a continuous run, it's clicked together, and it is limited to 20 foot sticks. Another thing that you would see, or another electrical conduit you would see, is DB2. PVC duct, very common, obviously. It comes in ranges of 2 to 6 inch. It's available in up to 40 foot sticks as well. It cannot be horizontally drilled, and it has a thin wall with low impact strength. And you've got to really look at your bedding when you put this down, because you don't want it shifting, because it does, because of its thin wall, it may be an issue for cracking as well. Then we see electrical metallic tubing for above ground applications. That's metallic. And then non-metallic tubing, which we see in slab and chase wall applications. And it has a very limited range in size, 1/2 inch to 2 inch. And then the last is fiberglass reinforced plastic. So those are your options that you would see currently in the electrical conduit market. So when we do a comparison of PowerGuard to PVC, these are some of the differences. And this is PVC conduit specifically. Could be steel as well. One of the things with PowerGuard, it comes in a reel, so you can get up to 10,000 feet, depending on what size. That's obviously a smaller diameter. PVC sticks are 10 foot and 20 foot sticks normally. PowerGuard comes in custom colors and stripes that are available. There are high MOQs, but right now, what we do is we have PowerGuard as a standard with its red, 4 stripes. It has a super silicore inner and longitudinal ribbing. One of the other things with PVC is, or with PowerGuard, is it's self-bending, so you don't need a lot of elbows. And I'm going to show you guys a video of some installations being done, so you can actually see that as we're going here. With PVC, you need elbows for turns. With PowerGuard, because it is HDP, you can horizontally directional drill, you can plow it, you can open trench it. So there's multiple options for installation. With PVC conduit, installation by open trenches is the most common. It's like we said earlier, there is a directionally drilled PVC conduit, but obviously the majority of them are using the standard conduit. And one of the big features with PowerGuard is the super silicore inner wall. And what this does is it gives you a coefficient of friction of 0.05. So it's crazy for those that have been involved in actually pulling cable. 0.05 is quite incredible without any wet lubrication. With PVC, the coefficient of friction is about 2.0 and requires a wet lubricant as well too. So installers, they don't really like using the wet lubricant. If they don't have to use it, it'd be kind of a cool feature for them. CIC cable and conduit is available, factory installed with PowerGuard. With PVC, you can't do that. You can also put pre-installed tapes from 500 pound to 2,500 pound. That's readily available. Although the standard PowerGuard right now is sold empty, so we don't actually put a pull rope in it, but it can be ordered with a pull rope in it. With PVC, you can't do that. We also have a product called Pinpoint, which is a built-in traceable wire available in the wall of the conduit. So this can be done as well too if there's a need for that. Obviously, you can't do that with PVC. And then, of course, the big deal is it's a continuous length. So you're not joining every 10 or 20 feet like you would with standard PVC or conduit. I want to talk about the two options for contractors. So there is the PowerGuard, which is a solid wall HDP. It comes in a variety of different wall thicknesses. It's available 1/2 inch to 5 inch in a continuous run and 6 inch in sticks. They all come with super silicore. and longitudinal ribbing, as you can see in that picture, and the black stripes on it. So it's very easily identifiable. And it competes against rigid PVC 1/2 inch to 6 inch. PowerGuard Flex, for some of you who may know Duraline from before, they have had a product called Smooth Core Flex, and basically that Smooth Core Flex has been around for years and years and years. It's a US product. Unfortunately, it does not carry a CSA listing, and PowerGuard Flex at this point right now actually will be launched and is pending approval, and we should have it going in probably the summer or late spring this year. So PowerGuard Flex, it's a dual wall HDP, which will be in sizes 2, 3, and 4 inch, and it's going to compete against 2 to 4 inch DB2 ducts. So that's sort of what we're seeing out there in terms of the two different products and where we're going to be kind of placing them. A little bit of information on plastic. When we look at PVC and HDP, they were both launched in the early 1900s, PVC being first in 1912, HDP being created in 1933. The difference between the two products is PVC is basically, it's 73% of additives for plastic. So there's a lot of things that they put in there to make it hard or flexible and different things, whereas HDP basically has no chemical additives in the mix. So one of the things with PVC versus HDP is it's very difficult to recycle PVC, and it's actually extremely easy to recycle HDP. And there's a comment here that we're saying it's about 200 times more prone to failure. And it's not that PVC is bad or anything like that. It actually goes down to the molecular structure. And one of the things that HDP is, it has longer molecules. So it's going to have less stress in a longitudinal manner versus PVC. So that's basically the difference between the two products or the two plastics. And when we look at a few more plastic facts here, because HDP is chemically resistant, it doesn't leach chemicals into the ground. And this is a big deal for a lot of, for instance, California would be a big deal for them. But a lot of cities and countries are looking at this, whereas PVC can leach chemicals over time. They're called phthalates, and they do pose harm to people, groundwater, and crops and wildlife, because it gets into the water system, gets into the crops, and animals eat it, we eat it. So, we see these chemicals all over the place. One of the nice things with HDP, as far as joints and segments like that, we use mechanical couplers to do this. So we do have a Sherlock coupler, which is CSA listed, and we do have these push fit couplers. So we have a bunch of different couplers that are easily used and will actually join rigid PVC to HDP because they have the same basic outside dimensions. So that's something to keep in mind. With PVC, you're usually using joints that are glued with a primer or a cement for all the joints and sweeps and fittings and things like that. With HDP, you're normally installing from a reel or a coil. So, in a lot of cases, there is some efficiencies that are there that you don't have with using stick pipe. There's obviously a little bit less handling from the installers, depending on how you install it. With sticks, you got to hand carry them into place. And, safety is a big thing these days. So there is increased risk to injury for some installers. Wanted to cover off some of the installation methods as well. So basically, the biggest one that we all see is horizontal directional drilling, where they're actually pushing that in, directional drilling it in specifically where they want it, and then they're going to pull in the HDP after. And then we see this is a plow installation where they're actually taking the full reel, running a plow and depositing it. And you would see this, in rural areas along open highways, stretches of open areas. Up north, you would see this a lot too. And then open trench. So specifically here, you can see a bunch of different applications. Here on the left, a bunch of HDP in the ground. This is a nice combination where they probably have some plumbing and electrical, and they also have a small microduct here. We're seeing a lot of plumbing and different applications that require signaling and electrical applications. On the right, looks like we're seeing some PVC as well, on top, one on top of each other. They got the warning. So this is obviously a low voltage, so they don't have to use separators to separate everything there, or spacers. And the other thing that's interesting about HDPE is it actually works very well in the cold. So it lends itself that way in terms of not becoming brittle, and it actually will stay flexible, which is kind of great in terms of when you have ground heaves or settling, you're not going to have the HDPE cracking because there's not a lot of joints. So that's really good. And then when you look at installation, the actual minimum long-term cold bending radius is very good with HDPE. Obviously, it's going to depend on your SDR or your wall thickness, but the bending radiuses are fantastic. So that's another thing that's important. Impact resistance. I was actually surprised when I found this out, but when you look at data sheets for a PVC pipe versus an HDPE pipe, what we see is different temperature ratings that they're actually tested at. So a PVC pipe is conditioned at 73 degrees F, and an HDPE pipe is actually conditioned at -4 degrees F. So, the testing right out of the gate is completely different. So when you're looking at a data sheet, sometimes it's difficult to understand, what the real data says. But definitely, you're going to see good impact resistance with HDPE. And again, coefficient of friction. We touched a little about this earlier, and one of the things, like right out of the gate with these two products, is you're 75% less coefficient of friction with no wet lubrication. So this is huge. And when we start looking at communication cables versus electrical cables, they're very different, because you're going to see much smaller diameters on the communication cables of fibers, where electrical cables are going to have larger diameters. So this plays a huge role in terms of installation and how it can lend itself well to the installer. And then these are some great pictures, because again, sticks versus continuous. And the picture in the middle here really kind of shows it to you. This is actually, I believe, a water application. It's an older picture, but you can see all your joints that you have to use on the PVC here, whereas on the HDPE, you get a beautiful continuous bend, no joints. Here's a basic bed that you would see with spacers. You've got to clean that all out, make sure you've got proper bedding and put that in. And on the left here, you can see some spacers on the HDPE, and it's quite a nice run with easy bends. So you're not using bend sweeps or joints at that point. And again, here's a picture's worth 1,000 words. And if you look down there, you see that spaghetti of HDPE, but I called it controlled chaos, because it's very well organized. It's running into different areas. It's going into other conduits that may be crossing roads or whatever. But again, I'm gonna say to you that the HDPE, because of the outer diameter, will fit all of those PVC accessories. So if you're running the HDPE and you're coming up, you got to come up to a pole. You can use a bend. You can use one of our Sherlocks to connect to it, and then you can come up, no issues there. So there's endless combinations of what you can do to bring things above ground. And then, I want to look at, what is the sales and marketing strategy, with regard to PowerGuard. And one of the things that's nice is when you're selling to customers, you want to use that grocery cart mentality. You want to have more SKUs, fewer items, with a mix of PowerGuard and other products. And the good thing about that is it allows a guy in a truck to come in and pick it up. And we need to concentrate our strategy on smaller reels, maybe lengths and coils. So not large reels, but we want to give that ability to the small trucks and pickups, so that they can come and pick up smaller diameter PowerGuard, to compete against guys that just come in and throw a few sticks of rigid conduit in the back of their truck, and eventually we'll do the same thing with the PowerGuard Flex and smaller coils to compete with the DB2 market. That probably won't be, like I said, till late spring, early summer. What other markets can we look at with PowerGuard? A big one that we see right now is street lighting, parking lot lighting, residential, renovation, smaller scale, municipal, hydro, new subdivisions. There's probably others here that we can talk about after, or if you have suggestions, feel free to put them in the chat or questions. Hopefully I'm not going too fast here. But yeah, we can talk about that after. And now I want to talk about cable and conduit. Let me do this first though. Jordan, are there any questions or anything that are burning on the PowerGuard that we want to take care of now, or do we want to wait until the end?
I'm not seeing anything right now, but I'm still monitoring the chat. So if anyone wants to, they can go ahead and use the Q&A feature, and I'll let you know.
Perfect. Okay. So we'll talk about cable and conduit. So it's Duraline's CableCon. That's the brand name that they have. So basically, cable and conduit is a factory installed cable where we basically take the cable and we're going to extrude the duct directly over it. And we talk about different types of cables and things that people have used, but in the past we've seen a lot of coaxial, we've seen a lot of fiber optic, and a lot of communication cables. So that's been primarily what we've seen in Canada. But now we're seeing a lot more electrical cables. And, I shouldn't say it's new, because in the US, they have UL listed conduits and have had for some time. So they're used to putting electrical cables inside the conduit in the US. This is just something a little bit new for Canada because we've never had a listing for it here. So, one of the things that's good is, we're looking at the integrity of that cable because we want to make sure that we do all the proper setups. We're keeping the standards up there from start to finish. We want to look at temperature, manufacturing process, and make sure that, the cable's not going to stick to the wall of the conduit. Obviously, that's going to be a big deal and a big problem if you're trying to move that cable inside the conduit. So there are all kinds of things involved to make sure that we don't have issues there. When we look at the actual testing, we do test the communication cables prior and after the duct has been extruded around the cable. And basically what this is to ensure that there's no performance loss of that cable. And with electrical cables, it's a little bit different. We don't normally see testing. They're much more rugged, and they're not prone to damage or bending or anything like that. Or we don't see a lot of issues there. So what are the benefits of the CIC? Obviously, the continuous length with the pre-installed cable inside, right? It's going to protect the buried cables from harsh environments. You're going to see less digging, mishaps, rodent and animal exposures to unprotected cable. And when companies are spending a lot of money to put products into the ground like cables, they want to make sure that they have some kind of insurance. So that conduit is going to give them that insurance once it's in the ground. What are the other benefits? The biggest, obviously, is you're going to save time. You're going to save labor and costs associated with pulling and jetting cables. So that's a big deal. There's going to be opportunity in rural and outlying areas where labor can be an issue. If you've got a job, say, in Northern Ontario or anywhere north where, it could be anything. It could be transportation. It could be the actual labor to put it in the ground. It's going to be a huge savings, right? When we look at pathways that companies might want to do, they might actually want to look at future cabling installations and have the ability to replace and repair cables that are in there. So if you've got a conduit system in there and you want to replace that cable, you're not digging, you're not damaging, you literally pull that cable out and put a new one in. And then looking at possible configurations for the future. So sometimes companies will want to put in a cable that's already in there and leave it in there and use it later. So that's another option that customers have as well too. So when we talk about our capabilities, basically right now our capabilities have been about a 2.5-inch maximum conduit size. We're looking at a diameter of a cable of about 1 1/8. We do see multiple cables, so 7/8, we usually, we can put 3 in. We see this in street lighting applications. But we do feel that they're 0.35, 0.45, and 1.23, which are common in street lighting, are absolutely doable. And And one of the great things right now is we're actually improving our capabilities. So we feel we're going to be able to get to a 3-inch conduit very soon. In fact, maybe later this month. I don't want to push the envelope too quick, but we are improving the capabilities right now. What I recommend to anybody that's interested in doing this is to send us a spec or a technical document on the cable itself, so we can look at all the parameters of how it of how you want to run it, or how we're going to run it as well too. All right, I'm going to play this video. Hopefully the sound will work, but this is a video that is going to give you a little bit on a CIC installation. So you'll be able to see exactly how it's done. It also shows you how the HDP bends very well, and also shows you multiple options in terms of how a contractor would pull it in.
Duraline brings you our cable and conduit product, CableCon. Cable and conduit is a high-density polyethylene HDPE conduit system with factory-installed cables. Cable and conduit, CIC, is used in a variety of applications as pathways for delivering power, broadband, and communications. CableCon is a versatile product that can be manufactured in many configurations. Conduit size, color, and stripe are all easily customizable. Single or multiple cables can be factory installed in CIC. Typical cable components of CIC are service drops, fiber, coaxial, lighting, and power utility cables. Duraline's experienced staff will find the wire or cable to suit your project's needs, or you may specify your own. Cable and conduit has many advantages over both directly buried cable and PVC pipe and wire systems. Direct buried cable leaves your cable vulnerable to installation abuse and ground hazards, leading to increased failure rates. PVC pipe and wire requires a 3-step installation process: one to assemble the PVC, one to install the pull rope, and the last to pull the wire. More frequent manholes and splices are required for the shorter pulls. Using cable and conduit, CableCon, the advantages are simple. Cables of your choice are factory pre-installed in the high-density polyethylene conduit. HDPE conduit is flexible and lightweight for easy installations. CIC is delivered in a continuous length on a reel. It is a one-step installation of both the cable and the conduit. Cables are factory installed, resulting in a damage-free environment from delivery throughout the placement process. The conduit is in place for future upgrades or repairs without incurring additional construction costs. Faster installations with fewer required crew members saves both time and money. Cable and conduit can be installed and buried in underground environments. Typical placement methods are conventional trench, backhoe trench, directional boring, or vibratory plowing. Please be aware of and follow all safety precautions required for these types of construction methods. There are a few tools that make installing cable and conduit more efficient and easier. A rotary duct cutting tool, available to cut different diameters. A ratchet cutting tool. A longitudinal duct slitter slits the HDPE safely away from the cables and helps in securing the cables prior to cutting. An expandable pulling eye, size specific. A 5,000-pound pulling swivel attaches to the pulling eye. A snatch block. And 6,000-pound bowline pull tape. CableCon placement practices. When setting up the reel of cable and conduit, load the reel so it pays out from the bottom of the reel. To prepare the cable and conduit, remove the seal at the end of the duct, cut the tape attached to the cable or cables in the conduit, allowing them to move freely within the conduit. A note to installers: all reels of cable and conduit have more conduit than cable on the reel. As the CIC is installed, the cable will draw back approximately 1.5% into the conduit at the payout end. For example, on 500 feet of CIC, the cable will draw back roughly 7.5 feet from the payout end of the conduit. Let's look at a few different cable and conduit placement options. Conventional trencher installation. Place the reel trailer at the most suitable location for payout. The center of the reel should be aligned with the digger arm of the trench. Attach the expandable pulling eye with a swivel to the payout end of the CIC, on the conduit, not the cable. Position the trencher along the predetermined path. Attach a length of the bowline pull tape from the swivel to a secure location on the trencher. Begin trenching. As the trench is cut at the appropriate depth, the CIC will pull off the reel directly into the trench. Once the trench is complete, raise the trenching arm and move forward, pulling an extra length of the cable and conduit for termination. This was a box-to-box residential installation 302 feet long. There were 2 vertical 90-degree bends and 1 horizontal 90-degree bend. The CableCon was 2-inch Schedule 40. which delivers 2,500 feet on a 96-inch reel. The cable was 1/aught, 25 kilovolt, 260 mil EPR, jacketed with a full neutral. After the cable and conduit was installed in the trench, we were able to hand push the cable through all 302 feet. It required a 2-person crew for installation. Backhoe trench installation, no obstructions. When determining the route of the trench, plan for the best location to place the dirt, allowing a path for the backhoe to run parallel to the trench to pull the CIC. Backhoe the trench with minimum number of 90-degree bends. Once the trench is complete, inspect the trench, leveling all high spots and fill in any low areas. If any 90-degree bends are necessary, undercut the bends by rounding them with a shovel into 2 45-degree bends. Once the trench is prepped, position the reel trailer at the payout end of the trench. Set the backhoe parallel to the trench and lower the bucket directly above the trench. Attach the pulling eye and swivel to the payout end of the conduit. Attach the bull line pull tape to the swivel and secure the opposite end to the bucket of the backhoe. The backhoe operator will drive parallel to the trench, pulling the cable and conduit directly into the trench. The backhoe will be able to pull the CIC around all bends in the trench. Once the cable and conduit is placed in the trench, the backhoe operator can overpull some extra length for termination. At the reel end, hand pull the required length for termination. If lateral obstructions are present in trench installation, review the trench route, locating and marking all lateral obstructions. Plan for the best location of the dirt that's removed from the trench to allow for easiest passage of the backhoe. As the backhoe is digging the trench, hand dig the areas around the lateral obstructions. Once the trench is complete, inspect the trench. Leveling where required and undercut the 90-degree bends. After the trench is prepared, install a 6,000-pound bowl line pull tape throughout the route, under all lateral obstructions and around all bends within the trench. Use a fixed object at the end of the trench as an anchor. The anchor can be a vehicle, tree, or pole. We are utilizing the backhoe. At the anchor point, attach a snatch block with a chain. Then thread the bowl line pull tape through the pulley in the snatch block. Align the reel trailer with the center of the trench and attach the pull eye and swivel to the payout end of the duct. Attach the bowl line pull tape to the swivel. At the opposite end of the trench, attach the other end of the pull tape through the snatch block pulley to the moving vehicle, in our case, the trencher. Have the operator drive away from the anchor point. As the pull tape moves through the ditch, the CIC will follow the tape under all obstructions and negotiate all bends within the trench. Remember to pay off additional footage for termination at both ends. Utilizing a snatch block is a good solution when there are limited right-of-way issues. Transitioning cable and conduit to a secondary meter base is a simple process. Here are 2 popular methods. First, sleeve the CIC directly into the 3-inch pipe exiting the meter base. The excess conduit can be cut, exposing enough cable to feed into the meter base for termination. Alternately, use a 2-inch pipe with a sweep from the meter base. It's easy to transition from the HDPE cable and conduit to the sweep with a 2-inch Sherlock coupler. As you've seen, CableCon cable and conduit provides a one-step placement and a damage-free environment for your cable. One-step placement of cable and conduit saves you both time and money. Learn more about CableCon cable and conduit for your installations today. Contact your Duraline representative.
Well, that was pretty exciting. Anyways, just a couple of things to note when with that video is it really showed you how HDP bends around corners. So it really, it's very flexible in long lengths. You saw how the joints worked, and it's very easy to join to PVC, rigid. And the other thing that was really interesting was at 300 feet, he was able to move that actual wire with his hand, which is phenomenal. So, 2 guys moving that wire inside that conduit. So when we look at the opportunities, advantages, long continuous runs for power up to 69 kV, because that's what the standard calls out. You can use low inventory locally, so you can use your own. You can send cable to the factory, so you can send it to us directly and we can put that in for you. And in some cases, there might be situations where you want us to actually get the cable and just give you the completed system. But obviously, it's better for you to use your own product and then turn your own inventory. And that's the advantage of, putting some of this product in, depending on where we can find some advantages. There's possibilities to customize color, stripes, and identify specific runs or for specific customers. Again, there will be MOQs attached to that. But I still think street lighting has a huge potential for us as a standard stocking item and focus for contractors that are using this product now. We need to look at other electrical cables where we could use CIC and in a configuration that you'd be able to stock. So those are some of the things I don't know, and maybe after this we can have some discussion about that. We can throw it out there. And then lastly, when you look at the actual product line, there's other things. There's the push locks, the sure locks. We have a whole range of lubricants and gel type lubricants that are available. So it's a great way to go out there and get yourself in there to talk about it, and then bring in the PowerGuard after. And then bull line tapes, we have a full range of pull tapes, some that are detectable, some that are different ranges in weights and pull strengths. So that's something to look at as far as what else can we do to add to this. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about quickly was this picture shows rigid PVC actually glued to the high density polyethylene. And there are products out there. They're two-step kind of products. The one that we used to do this was Bonduit. So Bonduit will basically glue, PVC, steel, all types of different products. But in this case, it's the PVC conduit that we've glued. So you can glue if you wish to do that or want to look at that as an option. And I guess the big thing really with Duraline, which is kind of exciting, is, in 2019, our facilities became ISO 9001 and TL 9000. And, this doesn't mean a lot to an installer, I guess, in a sense that, it's an indication of the things that we have to do. But what it does mean is that we're constantly testing our products because we have to follow these standards. So we're looking at impact strength, stiffness, and crush, round. And, the chances of bad product going out are very, very minimal. And, we're excited about that. But anything that doesn't look good, we usually will quarantine it and scrap it right on our site. So this is just a little bit of extra insurance for everybody down the line, including end customers as well too. And when you look at this product, the PowerGuard product, I think it's going to be a game changer because, maybe 10 years down the road, people are going to say, oh my gosh, remember when we used to glue those sticks together and now we can use this continuous run. So, I think that's going to be the change for sure. And kind of just to recap, the sales strategy here, again, with the PowerGuard, we want to look at small reels, lengths, and coils so that we can, attack smaller users, guys in a truck or whatever. For CIC, we want to use your local inventory or with other options, of course, that we can look at in terms of sourcing cable for you, or you having cable sourced and sent to us. And then what are the other focuses we can look at other than street lighting? And then again, the accessories, the bull line tapes, or the lubricants and the couplers.